Hi, I'm Joe Morrison, founder and CEO of Razor Sharp Consulting and creator of the Donor Finder system. Welcome to part 8 of a 9-part video series that walks you through the process of creating a donor funnel, which is a step-by-step system that will help you attract, engage, and convert prospects into donors. Today, we're going to be talking about the solicitation solution. It's the second part of the top or final tier of the donor finder system. And it's designed to show you how to convert prospects into donors. Now, the number one reason that people don't give to your cause is that they're simply not asked. And we need to change all of that and be sure that they are asked. That's what the solicitation solution will show you. The most exciting part of this session, by the way, is that the whole solicitation process can be automated, which of course will free you up to do other things. But of course, it takes a little bit of upfront work in order to set things up first. At the heart of any fundraising activity is a solicitation exchange. That is, you actually need to ask someone for money. And that exchange is part art and part science. I can certainly show you the science or technical parts, but it's really up to you to infuse the art. That is, you need to get creative. You need to take the principles I'm about to show you and interpret them, change them, infuse them with your own energy, your own ideas, your own personality, and own them. The more you do that, the better the end result will be. Remember, you are soliciting people or asking them for money for your mission, for your organization, not mine. So make sure that your requests reflect the things that are important to you. And more importantly, help other people understand why your artwork is so important. Now, I find that it's always good when you're fundraising to put everything into context. And that's what I'd like to do before we go any further. Let's define what I mean by fundraising. And then we can, when we come to an agreement on that definition, everything else that we're about to talk about will make a lot more sense. Now, the best definition of fundraising that I've ever seen comes from the University of Phoenix School of Philanthropy. And it says, fundraising is the right person asking the right prospect for the right amount, for the right program, at the right time, and in the right way. Now, that's a lot of things to get right. And unfortunately, most nonprofit organizations and most nonprofit leaders don't get these things right. And so they're not successful in fundraising. So what I'd like to do is to very briefly look at what I mean by each of these statements so that you can be better prepared to do it right yourself. There's an old adage in fundraising that people give to people, not to causes. Donors give to the person who asks. Donors usually give because they respect the person who's asking for the gift. They believe in the solicitor. And that person's often a volunteer, and they give because they're complying with his or her request. They give because they might have a compassion for the population that your nonprofit serves. The person making the request should ideally know the donor. And this isn't always possible, but it's the best and most effective way to raise money. If someone knows the prospect, it's a good bet they're the right person to make the ask. Now, private contributions in 2016 totaled more than $389 billion. $389 billion. And guess what? Individuals gave most of that, about 73%. An additional 8% came in the form of bequests, also from individuals. Foundations and corporations account for the remaining amount. So, more than about 80% of all philanthropy in the U.S. came from individuals. Not the government, not corporations, not even foundations, individuals. So if you want to build a sustainable fundraising program, you have to concentrate on individuals. Why? Because that's where the money is. That's why the donor finder system was created. And that's what the donor finder system is all about. Finding individuals to give to your cause. You have a much better chance of catching fish if you go where the fish are. The right amount really depends on many different factors, the least of which is how much money you need or how much your goal may be. The right amount is the right amount for the prospective donor. Everyone has a different capacity to give. The only way to truly find out what the right amount is for the specific donor is to get to know the donor. The more information you have about the prospect, the more intelligent you can be in figuring out the right amount. Donors don't really give to programs or projects, believe it or not. They give because they want to help the people who are served by those programs or projects, or change the circumstances of the things that they care about. Donors don't make gifts to donations or don't make donations to buildings, even though many buildings bear the names of donors. Donors give to support what goes on in the building. So in deciding what is the right program you want a donor to support, think more about the people being served. What changes in behavior can a donor emotionally connect with? Was someone homeless before who now has a home? Were they hungry and you fed them? These are the things that get people interested in making a donation. Make the right emotional connection with a prospective donor, and you'll have found the right program. Now, there are better times in a prospect's life to make a request for a donation than others. There are better times of year. Some dates and cycles are simply better than others. Once again, it goes back to the prospective donor. Did they recently have a windfall? Maybe a big tax return. That might be a good time to make a request. Did they have a death in the family or lose a job? You might be better to hold off with that request until they're through that particular crisis. Choosing the right time to make a request is never easy. The important thing to remember here is that you should never expect the donor to fit into your timetable. Just because you need the money now is not a sufficient reason for someone to give it now. It may just be inconvenient or ill-advised. The right time is always when the donor is ready to give, not when you're ready to make the request. The most important thing you can do as someone who is fundraising is to build deeper relationships between your prospect and the organization you're fundraising on behalf of. Because relationships matter, don't rush your fundraising requests. Harvey Mackay famously wrote a business networking book called Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty. And that's good advice in nonprofit fundraising as well. Raising money is hard enough. It's doubly hard when your first contact with someone is to ask them for money. So don't do it if you can avoid it, which you can. So how can we be sure we get all of these things right? Well, if we do 3 basic things, we'll have a good head start. First, by having a proper solicitation exchange. Second, having a proper solicitation sequence. And third, by having a proper solicitation strategy. So let's look at what goes into each of these 3 things in detail. Let's start with the exchange. There are 3 key entities involved in the exchange. The first is the organization or the nonprofit that you're raising money for. The next is the prospect that you hope will give that money. And between the two is the asker, who represents the organization and serves as sort of a go-between, a middleman, if you will. The process of solicitation starts when an organization has identified and begins sharing its mission and its goals. The prospect, on the other hand, must have similar values, which of course are also exchanged and shared. In the middle is the asker. The asker, as we learned from our definition of fundraising, really should know the prospect, but technically he or she represents the organization, the nonprofit. The asker is responsible to take the mission and goals of the organization and share them as values with the prospect, and open a line of communication both ways between the prospect and the asker. And then hopefully convey or provide the support from the prospect back to the organization. Now, the asker is an essential element in the exchange and really shouldn't be taken for granted or trivialized as not important. Getting the right person to make the ask makes all the difference in whether you get a donation or not. Have the wrong person do it, and you'll hit a brick wall. I guarantee you. Trust me, I've hit a lot of brick walls, and I have the scars to prove it. Now, let's look at the actual solicitation process that the asker will follow. It has 4 parts. It's a very simple process, and anyone really can do it. You start with the opening. That's where you sort of conduct small talk. You get to know the prospect a little bit better, and you set the stage for a conversation. Next, you're going to discuss the involvement of the prospect. What things have they shown interest in? Have they volunteered? Did the asker or prospect maybe work together on a project somewhere along the line? How do they know one another? This is where a personal connection is made with the prospect. Then the asker moves on to the presentation. This is where the prospect learns about the needs of the organization, its structure, its accomplishments, its leadership. This is also the part of the process where the prospect is actually asked for a gift. It can take many forms, but the ask has to be made. And then finally, the asker ends the conversation with a closing. Typically, you discuss the next steps, how much time is needed for a decision, especially if it's a large gift. What's the chain of command for keeping in touch and things of that nature. What's important to remember is that during the involvement and presentation sections, there is often a bit of back and forth discussion that is to take place. And this discussion is usually where questions are answered and objections are overcome. Miss this part, and you might as well have just mailed out a brochure. This is what makes it highly personal. And that's pretty much it in terms of the solicitation. It's straightforward, direct, easy to understand. Fundraising is not really rocket science, folks. Mostly it's planning your work and working your plan. And what I want you to remember is that these 4 parts are the same whether you conduct a face-to-face meeting, an email solicitation, a phone-a-thon, or even write a grant or conduct a special event. Organize your information into these 4 parts and deliver it this way, and you'll be successful in raising money, plain and simple. Why can I say this with such confidence? Well, because I've done it. I've had face-to-face meetings. I've had telephone calls. I've conducted special events where I followed this format or framework, and it just works like magic. It doesn't mean that everyone I've ever asked to said yes. More people have said no. But the structure stays the same. And after a while, you don't even have to think about it. When you follow the framework and engage your prospect, what ends up happening is that everyone's level of satisfaction goes up. The organization is happy. The asker is happy. And most importantly, the prospect is happy. And when the prospect is happy, more often than not, he or she will make a gift. They'll open their wallet and make a donation. And that's what we're looking for, isn't it? Now, before we go into the proper sequence, I want to address a question that I get all the time, especially when I talk about having the right person ask for a gift. And that is, who should really ask for the gift? Who is the right person to ask? And many people think that the right person to ask is the development director or the executive director, the CEO, because after all, it's their job, right? And let me tell you, that's not necessarily true. Yes, it may be in their job description to raise money, but many times the development director or the executive director are the wrong people simply because they don't know the prospect. And how can you ask for someone for money if you don't know them? Well, they can ask, but people are going to run away in fear. And think about it this way. If I stopped a complete stranger on the street and said, "Hey, please give me money," how many do you think would actually do it? Not many, I assure you. Having a personal relationship with the prospect is crucial in order to get the best result. That's why you want to have someone who knows the prospect or at least is a trustworthy authority. people have to trust the asker before they open their wallet. Now, the good news is that there's another sort of psychological trick that you can put into play in getting people to trust the asker. A number of years ago, I discovered that there are certain kinds of people who are trusted more than others. Firefighters are a good example. When they show up at my house, they have the run of the place, right? And they go wherever they want. They look in any closet, they open any drawer, they peer into any corner they want. Why? Because I trust them. And that got me thinking, are there other professions that people trust? And if so, what are they? And so I did a little research, and I discovered this. A Gallup poll conducted in November of 2012 showed that there are trusted professions, some professions more trusted than others, and they rank these professions by percentage. So as you can see, the least trusted people are used car salesmen. And that's not really a surprise, right? But what you may not have known is that senators have a ranking of only 14%, and business executives aren't that much higher at only 21%. Now, let's look at the other side of the equation. The most trusted profession, nurses, followed by pharmacists, physicians, engineers, dentists, police officers, college teachers, and clergy. And clergy are less trusted than engineers. Can you believe that? So how do you put this information to use? Well, imagine if you had a group of nurses raising money for you, or just one. Do you think they would be more successful than, say, a stockbroker? My guess would be yes. Even though stockbrokers deal in money all day, they may not be the best person to make a request because people don't trust them. Sorry about that, anybody that's out there listening that is a stockbroker, but this is not my ranking. This is from a real Gallup poll. And so whenever you have an opportunity, say, to recruit a medical professional, an engineer, or a police officer to ask for money, do it because they're going to automatically engender an immediate sense of trust in your prospect. Now, there's no guarantee that these professions who rank higher will really do a better job of fundraising than anyone else you have asking, especially if they don't know the prospect. But if you're forced to choose and have two qualified people who both don't know the prospect and one's a nurse, I would go with the nurse. Engendering trust in your prospect really is that important. People will not give you money if they don't trust you, period. And there's no way around it. So if you can hedge your bets, then I recommend doing it. Okay, so let's look at the solicitation sequence now. Doing things in the right order is the backbone, really, of the whole donor finder system. And it should be really important to you when you're asking people for money. Timing, as we said in our definition of fundraising, is dependent on when people want to give, not when you want to ask them. It takes time. It usually doesn't happen overnight. But you can lead your prospect down a path over time that helps them want to give and want to give now. And we're going to look at the complete sequence in a moment. But first, let's spend a moment on something I call the cultivation cycle. Let me explain what this is. I often tell my clients that people don't wake up in the morning and think to themselves, I wonder who I can give my money away to today. They have to be cultivated to give. They have to be reminded that you need their money. And so donors typically move through a series of points before they become a donor. And these points are called cultivation points. Think about it. The first thing that has to happen is that you need to identify a person to become a potential donor. Once you've identified them, you can gather information about them. And the more information you have about them, the better you can market to them. Then you hopefully get them interested in your work as you conduct that marketing. And if they have an interest in something that you're doing, they will become involved in your work. And only after they have shown some level of involvement in your work can they be expected to invest or give to what you're doing. Unfortunately, all too often, nonprofit fundraisers try to move people from identification to investment in a single swoop. Sometimes they get a gift, sometimes they don't, but they don't ever really get a donor, at least not in the truest sense of the word, a long-term donor, by skipping this cultivation process. When people are cultivated properly, they give bigger gifts and they give more frequently. Now, there are some interesting statistics that go with the solicitation process. It's really more of a rule of thumb, but I want to share it with you. Advertisers tell us that you need to repeat a message 7 times before someone will buy from you. In fundraising, we call these repeating messages points of contact. Now, they aren't really repeating messages. They are things in this definition done to, for, or with the prospect before they become a donor. If you were to take all of your prospects and rank them into the top 10, the next 40, and then the next 50, you would need to have 10 to 12 points of contact with your top 10 prospects before they become a donor. There are 8 to 10 points of contacts you need for your next 40 prospects and 6 to 8 points of contacts for your next 50 prospects. All this really means is that you need to have more than one point of contact with a prospect before they become a donor. And the more points of contact you can create, the stronger the relationship will be, and the more money that will flow. Now, the great news about this whole cultivation cycle is that it can pretty much be entirely automated. It's really just a matter of creating the proper sequence of activities that will cultivate your donors for you. Our solicitation framework gives you a tool to help you understand how to automatically follow up with subscribers and prospects and provide them the information they need to make a donation decision. Ideally, you want to put your visitors into a sequence of cultivation landing pages in order to engage them past the initial visit. And of course, at every opportunity, you want to make it easy for people to give. So, we're going to look at each column of the solicitation framework in order so that we can learn how to do all of these things. Let's concentrate on the first column. The starting point for the whole cultivation process is your landing page. This is the place that people come to when they click a link in your Google or Facebook ad that you've created. And that's what drives people to your website, advertisements and promotions. Our goal, of course, is to move people from this landing page onto another page, whatever that might be. And rather than simply linking the pages together like you do on your website, what we want to do here is use email to move them from place to place. You see, email allows you to speak to your prospect rather than just assuming that they know why you're moving them from place to place. If you just send them to another page, you'll lose the opportunity to cultivate and engage them. And very often, you lose the prospect in the process. And that's why you see the email icon here between the pages of the framework. You also don't want to just send them the attachment with whatever information that you're providing them. Because if you do that, they may read the document but drop you like a hotcake, right? After they've read the document and got what they wanted. Attachments also provide no reason for your prospect to engage with you further. You can't afford to let them go so easily. So you email the link and further instructions and they're kept in the loop. Our objective here is to keep them in the loop for as long as you possibly can, at least until you've had the chance to ask them for a donation. Now, what you're going to address in that first email to them, I'd recommend, is the problem from our P5 copy strategy. And then you send them to the next page by adding a link in the email. You may also want to ping them with another email to get them to engage quicker. Or to offer them something additional that you've conveniently maybe forgot in the first email. And this ping gives you another reason to have a point of contact with your prospect. If you pay attention here, you can already see the cultivation process beginning. Now let's talk for a moment about retargeting. I don't want to get too technical here to have you lose focus. So what I'll say about retargeting is this. There are going to be people who click an ad, come to your landing page, and never take any action. They don't subscribe. They don't visit any other pages. They don't share your page on Facebook, nothing. Well, the idea with retargeting is that you can show ads and messages to those people and encourage them to visit your site again. Maybe you offer a different donor magnet than you did before, or maybe you give them a discount or an incentive for returning. The purpose of retargeting is not to leave anyone out. Subscribers get contacted and non-subscribers get contacted, even though the messages they get and the ways they will be contacted may be slightly different. For the remainder of the training, however, we're going to focus on subscribers. Okay, so let's talk about the second column of our framework. This is our thank you for becoming a subscriber page, and it's the first video that our prospects will see. And what are we really trying to do with our first page, our first thank you and video page? Well, the same thing that we did with the landing page. We want to move them along down the line. But while you have their attention, you want to cover a few important things, right? You want to congratulate them and thank them for taking action for your cause. You want to introduce yourself or the authority figure in your organization. You want to set the expectation of what's to come. You want to show some incomplete results in your video, highlighting the first part of your unique system. Remember, they are incomplete results because you need the donor to complete them. You'll have a call to action asking them to continue to watch the next video, and you'll tell them what's in that next video, highlighting hopefully anticipation. Your email content with the link to the next video will highlight the second unique step in the program. And you may want to ping them again with something additional. Perhaps you'll ask them to like you on Facebook or participate in a poll. I put the ping option under every single email as a reminder, not to tell you that you must ping people every time. Work the pings into your sequence as often as they make sense for your organization. Now, the third column is going to address the second step of your unique program. You'll want to move them down the line again, offering only a portion of the problem to be solved, and highlighting the proof, in this case, of your results. I recommend that you use a case study or a metaphor to show why you're so successful. This is where you can show actual clients being served or situations being changed. Testimonials are really great for this part of the sequence, and they can be a great reason to ping them once again. Now, the fourth column shows video 3, of course, and all of the things that you want to do there. And this is really an important video because it sets up the request that's to follow on the next page, which is where we're trying to move them, always down the line, right? And although you want to do the same things you've done in the previous videos, you also want to overcome any objections that your prospect might have and really infuse the persuasion shortcuts, the persuasion elements that we talked about in the last session. So the follow-up email will deal with the promotion, okay, from our P5 copy strategy. You may want to offer a challenge and highlight what they'll lose if they don't act now. And, of course, create a sense of urgency. So it's important to understand this last column in our sequence as well. And what I want you to remember is that this last column should not be the last contact we have with our donors or our prospects, even though it seems like it's the end of the road here, especially if they make a donation. Now, the solicitation or request here in this last column is where you ask your prospect to become a donor. It can go at the end of video 3 or be its own page. It's really your choice. But ideally, it's a video, and it features an authority figure in your field. It should follow the format that we talked about earlier: opening, involvement, presentation, closing as closely as possible. And you may want to feature a client as well. If you're a youth organization, for example, having a kid make an appeal for money is one of the most moving and emotional things you can do, because who can say no to a child, right? But there are two possible outcomes to your solicitation request. Either they're going to say yes and make a donation, or they'll say no or not take action, in which case more cultivation is needed. In either case, you're going to be continuing the conversation with them, so it's really not the end. And in this video, you want to thank them for making it this far, because they really must be interested if they got all the way to the end. Review the big picture of your results. Remember, it's the results most donors are interested in. Discuss the next steps after they take action or they make a gift. There always has to be a next step, always. And then once again, address the risks of not taking action. Make this part as emotional as you possibly can, because people's wallets follow their hearts. Don't be afraid to pull on their heartstrings. Now, whenever we talk about video, emails, and sequences, I'm always asked the same thing. What's the right timing for these things to be sent? In the overall plan, the timing is continual. That is, it never stops. But it does have to start somewhere. So, when a subscriber comes to your website and signs up, how much time should pass before they get your first email? Or how much time should pass between their sign up and the first video? These are all good questions, and they depend, quite frankly, on a lot of factors, not the least of which is how quickly do you really want to move them through that process. Now, the P5 copy strategy can help with your messaging, but it doesn't really help with the timing. Remember I said earlier that fundraising is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. But you've got to get to know the prospect a bit before they become a donor. They have to demonstrate their interest or involvement first. This takes time, but it doesn't have to take forever. So let's look at an example sequence that moves people along rather quickly and that covers all the steps. Here it is all at once. Now, let me caution you. This may or may not reflect your own sequence. You want to say and do things in your messaging that are consistent with your organizational mission and your organizational messages. Make sure that your sequence and timing fit into the framework of who you are and what you're all about. But in this example, we start when a person subscribes. And the first email they get is immediate and deals with the problem that we've already identified. It gives them the donor magnet download and has them watch a video overview of the donor magnet. We wait 2 days, then we send another email on a weekday at 9 a.m. I like to talk to my donors during the weekdays so that it mentally seems like a business transaction. And I think it presents a more professional image, because emails on the weekend seem like an intrusion to a lot of people. And you might feel differently about your own message, and you know your audience better than I do, so do what feels right to you. That email will deal with the first unique step of your program. We'll wait another day, then send another email on a weekday at 3 p.m. And that email will deal with both proof of our program and be followed up with a ping email. Now, these two things, of course, can be done together in one email if you want, or one can follow another on the same day if you want to send them an email and ping them. But your email one of the emails will at least have a link to video 2 and perhaps a poll maybe that we want them to participate in. We'll wait another day, and then we'll send an email on a weekday at 9 a.m. I alternate afternoon and morning emails to look like a real person sent them. Change up the times as much as you'd like to give it a sort of a real feel. And that email will deal with the promotion and will feature step 3 in the video. Now, I would only wait a few hours after a prospect has watched the video before I send them another email. Time is of the essence at this point, because in the sequence, hopefully we've gotten them excited with our promotion email and our video, and they're still feeling sort of all that positive energy. So make sure you set your trigger correctly here. Don't send one email 2 hours after the last email. Send the Second email only after they've actually watched the video. And there's a difference there, because you want your prospect to feel as if you know that they watched the video and that you're just as excited as they are, just excited as they are that they did watch that video. And so it becomes very personal, it becomes very timely when you're able to do it that way. Now that email is going to contain a link to video 4. And it's going to be the actual request for a donation. Now, this doesn't have to be really long. As a matter of fact, I would keep it on the shorter side. For me, that's under 5 minutes. But make it emotional. Highlight your accomplishments and be bold. If people don't feel that you're confident in what you're doing, they won't feel confident in giving either. I always tell my clients and students that no one wants to get on a sinking ship. If they think you're going under because you're too passive or too negative, they're going to flee like rats. But they'll pay big dollars to go on a cruise ship when they have confidence in the crew. Why is that? 2 reasons. 1, they think they're going to have fun on the trip. And 2, they're sure they're going to reach their destination. And you need to paint the same kind of picture when asking for money. Take the attitude of, hey, we're going on this journey to our happy place, and we're doing it with or without you. And I hope you'll come along because we're going to have a fun time. We're going to have a blast. Adopt that attitude, and you'll be surprised at how donors really come out of the woodwork to support you. Now, if they make a gift, great. That's wonderful. Send an immediate thank you to them, right? And potentially direct them to a thank you video from your clients or other donors. If they don't make a gift, put them back into a further cultivation sequence. Just don't have them repeat the one that they just went through. Make that a unique sequence. That sequence should be directed at building on what you've already told them and persuading them even more than you did previously. You can have as many sequences as you'd like that last as long as you like for both donors and non-donors. But let me just say that just because a prospect hasn't made a donation doesn't mean they aren't interested in giving. It just may mean that you need to do a better job of persuading them. Or maybe it's just a bad time for them to give. There are a whole host of reasons. Keep at it until they say no, either by leaving the sequence, like unsubscribing, or they tell you explicitly that they aren't interested in giving. Okay, so the final leg of our journey is the solicitation strategy itself. This is where you plan out what you will say and where people will go at each phase of the sequence. Remember, we're always trying to move people from their point A to their point B. And it's sort of like a game of chess. You always have to be one move ahead of your prospect if you want to win the game. Now, your solicitation strategy outline is going to help you do that. Fill in the video title, maybe a brief description of what it's going to cover, and most importantly, what the action step will be for that video and email. You may also want to list the amount of time that will pass between each phase of the sequence. Then do the same thing for each video in your sequence. And when this is complete, you'll have a good guide to show you what pages you need to set up and what videos you need to prepare. I would then also go back to the mission activator framework and fill in the video titles and the email titles that correspond to the videos. Now, these 2 frameworks should be used in conjunction with each other to complete your overall strategy. You already have the steps filled in there if you've completed that module in the Donor Finder system. So by the time you get here, you'll have a complete, unique system, one-page system that you can see and can help you move people forward. So I'd go back to that page, fill those things out, and then you'll be all set and ready to go. Now, I want to say something before we move on, and that is I'm very proud of you. I really am. I'm very proud of you for following along so closely, not just in this video, but throughout the course. And I also have good news. You're almost at the peak. Okay, you're almost there. We've climbed the mountain, and we just really have a few more feet to go. And then, of course, we can celebrate. So thank you for sticking by me and with me so far. And there's really only one more training video to go, and then I can set you loose on the world. Next, we're going to deal with the final chapter, so to speak, in the donor finder system. It's called the exponential factor. And I call it that for a reason. We're going to look at how to exponentially get more donors and how to get them to give more over their lifetime than just a single gift. And there are really just a few simple things you need to learn about, including things like crowdfunding and, of course, regular or monthly giving. And when you implement these things well, you'll have smooth sailing all the way to the bank. Trust me. Now, please be sure to download your solicitation solution framework and fill out all of the parts that you need to fill out. Figure out what emails, what videos, what landing pages that you need to create in the order that you need to create them to logically, sequentially walk your prospect through the prospect of becoming a donor. Thanks again for watching this training module. Knowing how to ask for money is, of course, only one part of the whole process, but it's an extremely important part. Please voice any concerns or comments you have in the Donor Finder System community, and really let me know what you thought about this solicitation solution session. I really do honor you for taking the time to complete this video training and for learning how to grow your nonprofit. I look forward to our next time together. Bye-bye.